Honestly, Liz Truss these days just opens her mouth and stupidity just rolls out of it to, to create such wonderful content for people like me to talk about. Um, Fun times as always. Oh, but it won't be probably the last time we talk about Liz Truss because it's CPAC week. This is the Conservative Action Summit or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it stands for now, but yeah, CPAC. Fun things happening this week. Donald Trump set to speak on Saturday. Liz Truss gonna be there all week, saying all kinds of nonsense. Nigel Farage even there, hinting that if Trump wins, he might get some sort of job in Washington. Don't know exactly what that job will be, but he's just saying, I'm going to get a job in Washington. But it doesn't stop there, because one of the things that Liz Truss has currently said is that if Donald Trump doesn't win, then the West is doomed to lose. It is going to crumble and it's all going to fall to pieces. Ukraine is going to fall to Vladimir Putin. But remember, it is Trump himself and the MAGA Republicans that are currently stopping the money from America going to Ukraine. Oh, yes. It's fun because now she's also said that it was the British deep state that thwarted her plans. You there? What are you doing? Oh, it's the deep state. What you doing? Thwarting your plans. Thwarting my plans? How dare you? Market crash. Anyway, let's get on to more of what's going on at this conference, because it might not be the last time we cover this, depending on how many times Liz Truss, shall we say, gets in front of the podium and opens her mouth. And to be honest, it's Liz Truss. She's going to take every single opportunity she can do to do that. But before we do get into that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. There is the YouTube links down below. There's the Patreon page where you can join me on there. There's the Buy Me Coffee link where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course the Pony Club down below as well. So as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. And even if you do just click the like and share button, thank you very much. So let's get on into this, because oh boy, this comes from The Guardian. A title of Britain's Deep State Thwarted My Plans, Liz Truss Tells Far-Right Summit. Liz Truss, the former British Prime Minister, spoke at a far-right conference in America on Wednesday, styling herself as a populist who took on America's equivalent of a deep state in her own country. What I'm waiting for at the moment is a video for this speech to appear as well, because I'll tell you now, if this video does appear, I haven't been able to find it at the moment, but I suspect it's out there somewhere, but I will hunt it down. Oh boy, is it going to be fun to go over. Anyway, continues. Truss was among the headline speakers at this week's Conservative Political Action Conference. That's the full thing, what CPAC stands for. At the National Harbor in Maryland, CPAC is billed as the biggest annual gathering of the conservatives in the US, and in recent years has embraced Donald Trump as brand of native populism. On Wednesday's opening session at the, quote, international summit, the XMPs sat side by side with Nigel Farage, the former leader of the Brexit Party, both with smiles and Union Jacks in front of them. Other speakers included Steve Bannon, former White House chief strategist associated with global far-right nationalist movements, Richard Grenell, a former acting director of the National Intelligence under Trump. Officials from countries including Australia, Hungary, Japan also took part. A moderator at the summit introduced Truss, sorry, not Trump, by saying that after her election in Britain, there was, quote, there was still a collective cheer in the conservative movement in the United States saying, wow, Margaret Thatcher is back. Oh, dear. Say what you will about, Margaret Thatcher, but I'll tell you this, at least Margaret Thatcher at least Margaret Thatcher was a competent prime minister. Like I say, and bear in mind, I am from Yorkshire, so I'm currently, going to spontaneously combust just for saying that. But anyway, not for the first time, Truss, whose premiership only lasted 50 days, sought to portray herself as a victim of bureaucratic forces, saying that I ran for office in 2022 because Britain wasn't growing, the state wasn't delivering, and we needed to do more, she said. I wanted to cut taxes, reduce the administrative state, and take back control, as people talked about in the Brexit referendum. Really, considering you were on the opposite side of the Brexit referendum, arguing against all that, that's kind of weird. Anyway, sorry about that. Like, where were we? Yes. Truss being on the opposite side of the Brexit referendum. Anyway, she continued. What has happened in Britain over the past 30 years is that power that is used to be in the hands of politicians has moved to quangos and bureaucrats and lawyers who, so what you will find is democratically elected government unable to enact policies. How many out of those 30 years were the Conservatives in power? Not only that, but Truss, when she was Prime Minister, had one of the biggest Conservative majorities in recent political history. It wasn't the bureaucrats, the lawyers, or the quangos. It was her own stupidity. Because ultimately, it is MPs and politicians that help to do and say what policy is and is not. It is then up to the bureaucrats to then implement that policy. That is why you don't politicize the civil service, because it is not a good idea. But, they try to do that because, they can't blame the EU anymore, so they've got to blame someone else. Anyway, Truss was then interrupted and asked to explain the meaning of quango. She replied, a quango is a quasi-non-governmental organization. In America, you call it the administrative state or deep state, but we have more than 500 of these quangos in Britain, and they run everything. She then went on to enlist the Environmental Agency, the Office for Budget Responsibility, the Bank of England, the Judicial Appointments Commission. She said there's a whole bunch of people, and I describe them as the economic establishment, who fundamentally do not want the status quo to change because they're doing quite fine out of it. They don't really care, pardon me, about the prospects of the average person in Britain, and they don't want things to change, and they don't want power taken away. Just what? The Office for Budget Responsibility has no power. Its job is to look at what the government will propose, and then it will make its own independent comment and review of if that is fiscally responsible. The Environmental Agency is empowered by the government to shockingly look after the environment. And then the Judicial Appointments Commission, set up so that you can have an independent body that appoints judges, so that judges are then just not handed out as a political favor to, whoever they like. Oh, you've done a good job. You can be a judge. You can be a judge, you know nothing about the law, but there you go. Just... Anyway, so Truss added, I think the issue now we face as conservatives is not just enough to will conservative politics. We also say that we want to control our borders, or we want to cut taxes, or that we want to reform our welfare system. Because we have a whole group of people in now Britain with vested interests in the status quo who have a lot of power. Really? You want to reform the welfare system? Exactly how does Liz Truss want to reform the welfare system? We want to cut taxes. Worked really well for her when the entire nearly economy crashed for her on that. And you want to control the borders? Well, maybe you actually fund these bodies and institutions that help do that. But the Conservatives haven't, so we're now seeing a lot of problems on that front. But she continues, we are now people are joining the civil service who are essentially activists. And that's what I said just a moment ago. You do not want to politicize the civil service because, first of all, it is going to put off people joining the civil service. It is going to put off people, talented people who join the civil service to come up with ideas or solutions for ministers because they don't want to put their head up above the parapet because someone might come along and say, you are an activist, fire him immediately. Yeah, because that's a good model for having a good civil service, isn't it? Anyway, Truss also said they might be trans activists. They might be environmental extremists. Sorry, they might be environmental extremists. Whether they're a trans activist or an environmental extremist, guess what? There are rules when you sign up to be a civil servant saying that you have got to put your politics aside to do your job. Because as a civil servant, you have to work for a conservative government, for a Labour government, for whatever type of government would be in power. You have to do your job. That is built into our civil service. And once again, they are trying to blame people because they've got no one else to blame for their own sheer incompetence. And this, unfortunately, creates a very dangerous atmosphere in the civil service. And it damages people in the civil service, stops good people entering the civil service, stops the actual good people in the civil service from coming up ideas because, well, I don't want to be singled out as an activist. So I'm just going to, put my head down and keep quiet, even though that person might have an idea that might help sort something out to put towards a minister. Anyway, she continues. So they might be environmental extremists, but they are now having a voice within the civil service in a way I don't think was true 30 or 40 years ago. But you just said this has been a problem 30 for the past 30 years. So we just have a whole new problem. And frankly, we have 100 political appointees doesn't even touch the sides in terms of dealing with them. I would love to know what her solution to this actually is when you say move power from these quangos, because if you move power, that still means that organization, that quango, would have to still exist. It would still be within the government. Even if you moved it within a department, that department now has more work to do. That department now has to hire more people, now has to have those experts in there. But someone like Truss just could go, we don't need environmental agency anymore. Once again, the dangers of these free market fundamentalists. Anyway, in an opinion piece published on the Fox News website, the former Prime Minister said the agents of the left are active in the administrative state and the deep state. I saw this myself firsthand as they sabotaged my efforts in Britain to cut taxes, reduce the size of government, and restore democratic accountability. The deep state did not take out Truss. Truss took herself out. It was her own budget that crashed the market. And nearly took out the UK pension industry, which the Bank of England had to step in. And like I said, we've said many times before, if that hadn't happened, that would have been an even bigger disaster. Yes, things are bad now, but they could have been infinitely worse. Anyway, Truss took office after winning the Conservative Party leadership contest to replace Boris Johnson. Her plan to spur economic growth with a mini budget containing £45 billion of unfunded tax cuts, including an income tax reduction for the highest earners, shook the financial markets and led her to a very swift demise. Her remarks at CPAC were then followed by Bannon, who at the same conference in 2017 vowed that then President Trump would wage an unending battle for the deconstruction of the administrative state. On Wednesday, Bannon said the administrative and deep state is still a state after Trump wins is starting on the afternoon of the 20th of January. Every day will be like Stalingrad. It will be a war to the knife. Again, really concerning if Trump wins that, certainly for America. Bannon, the former chief executive, chairman of Breitbart News, which he once described as a platform of the alt-right, the movement that has now embraced racism and anti-Semitism, added that if we want to save our country, we have to take down the administrative state. The Prime Minister has seen this up close and personal. You have to take down the administrative state. It is an out of control fourth branch of government, and our founders never ever envisioned, but would warn against. If they came back, they'd be furious. That internal fight is going to be absolutely vicious, and we have to win it. Again, it's an excuse to go after civil servants, to blame the civil servants for any of their fault and failings. Got a policy that's being enacted and it, fails. Wasn't the policy, wasn't the idea, wasn't the MPs, civil service. Those deep state lefty activists, fire them all and hire them again. Do you really think this is a good, stable ground to build like a formidable government? No, it's not at all. Anyway, Trump's allies have been drawing up plans to, quote, drain the swamp. Of course, that's Project 2025. In his second term, by curtailing the independence of some federal agencies and even ending government protections of tens of thousands of federal employees. The Heritage Foundation is leading Project 2025, a coalition preparing for the next Conservative presidential administration. And last year, hosted speeches by the leading Truss and then fellow British Conservative Ian Duncan Smith. The inaugural summit was billed by CPAC as a chance to bring people together from several countries around the world to share best practices and concrete solutions on how to fight the globalist takeover of sovereign nations. Yeah, absolutely. Complete foobar nutcases. This is why, of course, again, you don't want these guys in, because any of their plans fail. See, just that deep state. We're still going to get rid of that deep state, guys. Trust us. Once we get rid of that deep state. Anyway, this year's lineup of speakers for the main CPAC stage include Trump, Truss, Farage, the Argentinian President Javier Milei, a libertarian known to fans as the Madman, and the Whig. In past years at the conference, this is now heard from Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban and former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. An advert for Truss's book, 10 Years to Save the West, was prominently displayed at the CPAC venue, and The the Gaylord National Resort and Convention Center. That's a really weird second name. I did not think that was an actual thing. I just thought that was a thing that was just, a name that someone made up for an American comedy. But no, apparently that is a real thing. Um, of course, along with Tucker Carlson, a former Fox News host, recently conducted a phone interview with Russian aristocrat Vladimir Putin. Oh my word! Once we find a stream of this at some point, we are going to go over that and her speech, because that's going to be fun. It's going to be painful, but it's going to be fun. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.